everyone. I know I'm not just speaking for myself when I say that Fireside Chat with Dallas and Gerald was amazing. And now I'm really excited to welcome you all to today's Civic Engagement Workshop. I'm extra excited to introduce the two incredible leaders who are going to be presenting today. Both alumni from the Silicon Valley site of Year Up Bay Area. First, we have Beija Gonzalez. She's a Class 18 graduate and current candidate for the Oak Grove School District Board of Trustees in San Jose. Next, we have Peter Ortiz, a Class 10 graduate who currently serves as a member of the Board of Education for the Santa Clara County Office of Education. And he also manages public policy and government affairs for Year Up. Please feel free to add questions to the chat at any time or raise your hand as we will be making time throughout the presentation. And with that, I'd like to pass the baton to Beija and Peter. Ooh, is Peter here?
I think Peter, let's see, hasn't gotten assigned to the breakout room just yet.
Okay. We may be missing a few people.
Andre, I appreciate your kind words, and I'm definitely looking forward to the rest of this campaign. I'm looking forward to November too. Let me go ahead and text him.
In the meantime, if anyone wants to get started with some questions or put in the chat where you're from, why you chose this breakout session, feel free.
Hello, everyone. I am Pat Powell. I am the alumni steward in Chicago, and I decided to join this group, this particular breakout session. So first and foremost, hello to all of our wonderful and fabulous alums. You guys are great. You are continuously making the movement strong, and with you and through you and by you, it will be even stronger. So I'm part of this walk with you all. So thank you for allowing me to share this with you. So I just wanted to start off with that. My heart is always #1 place is our alums. And I joined this particular session because I want to learn more from the alumni perspective in regards to civic engagement and being a person who has a very strong voice in this area and want to be able to share that knowledge in a way where messaging can be different. Looking at a different lens and from the alumni perspective is why I'm here. So thank you.
Thank you for sharing.
Let's see, so maybe we can go around the room and just quickly introduce everybody. Just so you know, dividing people into these breakout rooms has to be done manually. So there's still people in the main session that are getting pushed over, including Peter. So we can just go around as people trickle in and kind of introduce ourselves. And maybe just turn on your camera while you introduce. I would love to see everybody's face while you introduce.
Hello, I'll start off again. Once again, I am Pat Powell. I am the Director of Student Services and Community Partnerships in the Chicago site. I'm also the alumni steward in Chicago, and happy to be here with our wonderful alums.
Hi, I'm Jason Tenuta. I'm the Employment Placement Manager over in Europe Puget Sound, and I'm also the alumni steward for the Alumni Puget Sound region. Good to be here.
I guess I'll go next. My name is Tessie Principal. I go by Tess, and I am a Boston Class 6, July 2005 graduate from Europe.
I guess I'll jump in really quick. My name is Andre. I'm D. Carroll. I'm from Philadelphia, alumni from January 2016. And I'm really excited for this conversation. excuse my hoodie. I will get dressed before the rest of the summit. But I'm excited to have the conversation. Civic engagement, something I'm really, really passionate about. So I'm looking forward to contribute to the conversation.
Hello, my name is Lordiana. I am the learning coach here in South Florida for the Talent Hub. You guys can ask me about that later. I am also the alumni steward, the new one, here in South Florida. So.
Hello, I'm Dia Perez. I can't start my video. It says the host stopped it, so I don't know what's going on there. But I'm from Providence, Rhode Island. I live in Austin, Texas now, though. Reason why I chose this breakout is because I am a political science major at the University of Texas, senior in my last semester.
Hey folks, I guess I'll follow my brother. So my name's Anel. My brother Jael just spoke. We're both from Rhode Island. I actually live in New York City now. And the reason I chose this particular session is because I want to learn more about how I can be involved and have an impact on the upcoming election and continue to be involved as I continue to evolve in my career professionally and also as I try to influence others too.
Okay, I'm gonna start calling out names.
Here, I'll go. Make yours easier now. My name is John, and I am a 2018 January alumni from Greater Boston area. And I chose this breakout session because it's incredible to me that people can be more and more apolitical, and civic engagement is I mean, in a democracy, I guess it's instrumental to democracy, and for us to be political human beings and advocate for our rights. I think I'm looking forward to the conversation, and I'm so happy to see an alum is running for office, Beija. I had no idea, of course, but from all the way on the other side of the nation. But
thank you so much. Just so you guys know, I'm running for school board, but Peter is actually already elected, so he'll pop in. You guys will see him. He actually is on the Santa Clara Board of Education. So both of us work in education, or I will work in education here in the Silicon Valley.
that's just perfect. I'm looking forward to the conversation. Thank you.
I guess I'll go. My name's Victor Franco. I am a July 2015 Year Up Greater Boston alumni. I am also currently sitting on the National Alumni Association board as the Northeast representative. The reason why I am in this breakout room is after all these videos have surfaced of what police brutality is continuing to look like in this country, I kind of stepped away from actually working or even trying to search for a job after I was laid off due to COVID. So I've actually been in the streets here in Boston, in these protests, creating conversation, fighting for different types of reform, not only just brutality against people of color, but also rent strike, things like that in my city. So I've been heavily involved. This is really important to me, and I think offering opportunity or a place for someone to understand what they are able to do or what they have at access for them is something important to me.
Thanks, everyone. So Peter is here. If you would like to, if you haven't had a chance to introduce yourself and you would like to, please go ahead and put an introduction in the chat and we'll go ahead and get started. So we have time to get through this presentation and I will pass it off to Peter. Peter, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Excellent. Can everyone hear me now?
Yeah, Peter, we can hear you.
Wonderful. Well, sorry so much for the way they had to divvy up people individually. But really quickly, hello and welcome everyone to what we hope will be a fun and informative and engaging workshop. The name of our workshop is Have Your Voice Heard, because we will be discussing the importance of utilizing your voice through the action of voting.
Awesome. So I know we went over it a little bit before, but I'm going to go ahead and reintroduce everybody, our facilitators. So first off, my name is Beija Gonzalez. I am a Bay Area Europe alumni graduate from 2018. I'm a grassroots organizer here in my community. I am a mother. I am a data analyst at LinkedIn, and then I'm also a candidate for Oak Grove School Board here in my community, which is the school district that my children attend. I'll go ahead and pass it off to Peter so he can introduce himself.
Great, thank you, Beija. My name is Peter Ortiz. Some of you may know me. I'm also an alum of Year Up Bay Area, Class 10. Since graduation, I've gone on now to work for Year Up, most recently as their manager of public policy and government affairs. But I also have the privilege of being an elected official in my own community on the Santa Clara County Board of Education. It's Beija and my privilege to be here today to meet all of you and to ensure everyone understands the importance of alumni civic engagement.
Awesome. So let's start off with goals. I want you guys to understand at the end of this breakout session, I want you guys to walk away with these things. I want you guys to be able to understand the importance of being an engaged and educated voter. I want to go over steps that alumni can take in order to be active in their community and vote. And then we'll go over the overview of the TurboVote campaign. And Peter will go a little bit more into what that means when that comes up.
Great, thank you, Beija. So here's our agenda for today's webinar. We have already done our welcome and introductions. We've also reviewed our goals for the presentation. Soon we will transition into our first section, which is the power of voting. From there, we will be highlighting what voter participation looks like and different factors that determine voter turnout. Moving on, we will share with the group what the general facts are regarding voter turnout, as well as what attracts people to vote. We also will be sharing tools and strategies you can use to register fellow alumni in your community, as well as family and friends. And then finally, we will discuss next steps and close out the webinar by answering any questions that you may have. We want this presentation to be as interactive as possible, so please feel free to ask questions. We did lose some time, I think about 8 minutes, so just know that we're running short on time, but still we want to be able to answer any questions that you have. So Kaylee, she'll be looking for any questions. There are a few questions also in the workshop, so we'll be able to stop and gain people's input and answer any questions that they may have.
Awesome. Keep in mind also that there are a bunch of slides that we're going to go through. Maybe we do have a Q&A section at the end. So maybe if we can hold our questions until the end, that way if there's something that we haven't answered, maybe we'll answer it in the slides. So just make sure you keep your questions until the end. You can go ahead and post them in the chat and then we'll answer them towards the end.
Great point.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you for that, Peter. So I want to start us off with a quote. Let us never forget that government is ourselves and not an alien power over us. The ultimate rulers of our democracy are not a president and senators and congressmen and government officials, but the voters of this country.
Thank you, Beija. This is actually a quote of one of my favorite presidents, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who led our country out of the Great Depression. So first off, we're going to be discussing the first section, which is the power of voting. Voting is how members of the public express their views in a democracy. This leads us to our first question to the group. Who can share with us what their definition of a democracy is? And there's no wrong answer. And if Kaylee, you could assist us with identifying one person and unmuting them to share a definition of democracy.
Yes. If you guys see a raise your hand button, you're welcome to press that. But if you guys want, I can just go ahead and pick a person like the old days. Put them on the spot. Let's see. I saw Greg joined us today. So Greg, do you mind sharing with us a definition of democracy?
Oh, you're just gonna put me on the spot like that, huh? What type of stuff is this? I didn't even get to formally introduce myself, and I apologize. I'm juggling being my child's executive assistant at the moment. But to me, my definition of what a democracy is just really allowing the ability for everyone to be engaged and everything being free and equitable and accessible. But I wanted to lead off with saying I'm super proud of Peter leading this. This is so awesome. I'm like trying to keep myself together. I always have a hard time at summits doing this. And then I also wanted to highlight Beija. You did a great job on the 28th anniversary video. So with that, I'll let y'all take over because I know we're short on time.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you so much for your definition. I think you did an excellent job explaining democracy. Just really quickly, just for the Webster's definition, democracy is a politically based system that is based on the idea that government should serve the interests of the people, and that where people have the full authority to choose their representatives. And just on here, you can see that it's rooted in the Greek language from demos, which is people, and kratos, which is rule.
Awesome, thank you, Peter. So next I want to go into political participation. A key to a democratic society is political participation, and political participation really looks different, and it's a broad range of activities. So first off, we have the more conventional side, and this includes things like voting, letter writing, contacting representatives, working on campaigns, running for office, joining groups, lobbying, things of that nature. And then on the other side, we have the more unconventional matter, which is like boycotting, sit-ins, marches, demonstration, and public disruption. Altogether, though, these things both exemplify civic engagement. And that's really what we want to try and push across the table to you guys today. Awesome. So I'll turn it over to Peter for the next slide.
Great. Thank you, Beija. Transitioning into thinking who is best to lead our communities, now more than ever, it is important for Europe and our alums to be engaged and educated on what their local and federal government is doing on their behalf. The COVID-19 pandemic has affected everyone in our country, but not all of us have been burdened at the same level. Some of us have lost our jobs, lost our health insurance, have gotten sick, or know someone who has gotten sick. More than 6.6 million Americans have applied for unemployment benefits, doubling a record set higher earlier this year. With a total of 10 million Americans losing their jobs, this is only a sign that layoffs have been accelerated since the outbreak of the pandemic. In times of crisis, societies look to our elected officials for leadership and guidance. Depending on who that leadership is how a country can either be prepared for a natural disaster or caught off guard and destabilized by it. When it comes to providing support for the public, who will our leaders prioritize? Will it be wealthy corporations, property owners, or will it be the general working public, communities of color, renters, and the average people like you and I. We then must consider if portions of our population and portions of our alumni population will be left out altogether from some of the resources that are provided to people who have suffered from the pandemic. As active citizens, it is our job to hold elected officials accountable on their response times and how they provide services to the community. There has been one major way to do this, and that has been through voting. I'll pass it off to Beija for this next slide.
Awesome, thank you, thank you. Okay, so voting is power. Why is voting power? First of all, voting is the fundamental act of civic participation and engagement through which young people can contribute to our democracy. While it's one of the many forms of engagement that youth and young adults can take, it's so powerful, and it's a way for youth to make their voices heard and to have an impact on issues that affect them and affect their communities directly. Their votes can be influential, and make no mistakes, your votes can be decisive. And because elections happen everywhere, their engagement that can also serve as entry points to other forms of participation. So I really want to make sure that you guys understand the power of voting. I'll go ahead and pass it over to Peter for the next slide.
Great, thank you, Beija. Our communities and our democracy become more just and equitable when all people are involved and take action. When all young adults develop healthy civic habits, skills, and commitment to our democracy, our local governments and federal governments will prosper. We believe this will happen when more and more diverse young people from communities, various of different class, come out to develop their skills and knowledge of civic change and civic duty and vote. And this will empower all of us to create and affect change. Decision-making becomes more representative for our communities when we all get out and vote.
Awesome. So let's talk about the youth vote. Young adults have a massive stake in the decisions that shape this country. Nearly all issues affect youth, and many youth differently or uniquely. Whether it's education or healthcare, the environment, immigration, housing, gun violence, and foreign policy that may send them or their peers to war. When young people vote and participate in civic life, they can bring valuable perspectives to these issues and play an active role in shaping their future. So I need you guys to understand that we are voting for the future that we own, right? Because this is our generation, this is our system, pretty soon this is our government. So your voting is super important. So with that, we're gonna go ahead and slide into a pop quiz. Can anybody in this room give me an example of participation in democracy?
Kaylee, if you could help us with the questions again.
Yeah. All right, I'm not seeing any hands raised. There also should be like a yes/no button, so if you don't see a hand raised. Voting, got from Daniel and Loriana, voting. There we go.
Very important. Writing letters, yep. I hear that. I wrote in a few letters in my lifetime.
Protesting from Jason, yep. Loriana, contacting representatives.
Right. How many of you guys have heard the chant, "Show me what democracy looks like" at a rally? And then the rest of the crowd is, "This is what democracy looks like." For me, democracy looks like the power of the people. And maybe you guys have heard the saying, "The power of the people will always be greater than the people in power." So yeah, that's definitely something to keep in mind.
Great. It shows you guys are all paying attention. Thank you. We'll go to the next slide.
Awesome. Voter participation.
Oh, sorry. Did you want to say an example?
I'm sorry, this is Pat from Chicago. I just wanted to add one. Also, if you can attend, in Chicago, we have different communities broken up by older people. I don't know how it is around the country, but if you are able to attend some of those community forums and those meetings that they don't publicize on purpose, but also on their website, they may put in public forums, participating in those and asking those hard questions so that way you can hold them accountable.
Yeah, so important. And you know what? One thing that we do here in the Bay Area is we have groups that, because these things aren't pushed out to the public like they should be, we actually make these graphics for them. If you're not going to let our public know, we'll go ahead and let them know. We make these graphics, we push them out on Instagram, Facebook, just to make sure that we have our people represented in these meetings. So so important, Pat. Thank you for that.
Great. Yeah, thank you, Pat.
You're welcome.
So we'll go ahead and move into voter participation. And then we're going to go ahead and talk about what voter turnout looks like. So our next section is voter turnout, also known as voter participation. Voter turnout is the percentage of eligible voters who cast a ballot in an election. And there are a lot of factors that lead into this number, such as age. I think it's important to call out that older Americans are more likely to vote than our younger Americans, which, as we talked about, how important it is for us as youth to be making the decisions for our future. Maybe this is something to really scope in on. The next is education level. People with a higher education are more likely to vote than people with little to no education. We also have income. People with more income are more likely to vote as compared to people with little or no income. And then we also have the gender gap. Fun fact, or maybe not so fun fact, in modern elections, women have a higher voter turnout than men. And then race. Race is always a big one. White voters have a higher turnout than Black, Hispanic, and Asian voters. And there's a lot of different reasons behind that, and we'll get into that a little bit more. But there is such a huge history of discrimination against minority voters in this country, including voter suppression. We'll talk a little bit about what that looks like more. But the majority race in the United States is white. And of course, most of other factors like education level, income, benefit white people due to systematic racism, which we've talked about a lot. So we'll go ahead and slide into what voter suppression is. I know I just talked about it. I really want to dive into that. So a huge factor that determines voter turnout is voter suppression. Voter suppression is a strategy used to influence the outcome of election by discouraging or preventing specific groups of people from voting. It's often used to prevent the vote of women, the working class, communities of color, and it's tactics that are rooted in Jim Crow racism and oppression of the poor. Let's talk about a little bit what voter suppression looks like. So some of us know strict voter ID laws in areas where people like African Americans and Native Americans don't have access to a DMV. Longer wait times in southern states. You can see here there's a graphic about how what the wait times look like. And clearly it's super unproportionate when it comes to the Black voter. Inaccessible voting polls or last minute closure of voting centers. And then most recently, I know you guys have seen it on Instagram, on your news, I'm sure you guys have all seen it on your feed at some point, the intentional defunding of our postal services. So let's go ahead and talk about why we should vote. So if you're a potential voter and you're thinking one vote won't make a difference, you need to consider that that carelessness on election day is one of the biggest reasons for low voter turnout, and was the major cause of determining the winner of the last presidential election. So yeah, that's a super big one. Don't be careless with your vote. Understand that your vote will make a difference. Gerald talked about it a lot in his fireside chat. Let's really hone in on that. Awesome. If you think my vote won't matter, if that's kind of the mindset that you're coming from, voter suppression has been used as a tactic to swing election outcomes as early as 1880. Ask yourself this: if our votes didn't matter, if our representation in those polls did not matter, then what is the need for that suppression? Okay, so just understand that if somebody's trying to keep something from you, if somebody's trying to suppress you for something, that absolutely means that your representation can and will make a difference. The next one, if you have the mindset that I don't care for either presidential candidate, I'm going to boycott the election. I hear that all the time. Understand that more than your president is going to be on this ballot. Local elections and propositions or measures are items on the ballot that will direct you and your community directly. Take, for example, Peter Ortiz ran for Santa Clara Board of Education. People like us are his constituents. People like us are the people that are going to vote him into power so that he can do that, be that representation for us. Somebody like me who's currently running for board, people like you are going to be my constituents and vote me into power. Don't cut yourself short by thinking that only your president is on, only your next president is on this ballot. It's so much more. And in fact, the other things on that ballot that are local are exactly what's going to impact you the most.
Great, thank you so much, Beija. And just to reinforce what you're just saying, what you just said, you know, we hear a lot of excuses from local leaders of why they can't do this or why they can't do that, or the system is against them. One example is ethnic studies. You know, I live in East San Jose, a high population of people of color, and the education system still didn't have any resources on Black Americans, on Mexican Americans, Chicano people, and supposedly we're supposed to be ground zero for the Chicano Mexican American movement. And when I got elected, that's when we pushed for countywide ethnic studies. And we had Latin American elected officials before then, right? But they just had excuses. So that's just an example of how local elections can really affect your life more than national. If you want to have good schools, if you want to have clean roads, you know, if you want to make sure that, you know, the police brutality is a huge issue. That's not the president who decides issues with police. That's the mayor and city council. So I just wanted to touch down on that, but great job, Beija. So another little pop quiz. Is anyone willing to share why, this isn't really a quiz, this is like a personal testimony. Anyone willing to share why they plan to vote this year? And obviously this is no wrong answers. There's no wrong answers.
Andre, I'll go ahead and unmute you right now.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I'll jump in on this question. So why I plan to vote on November 3rd is because I understand that on that day, we will choose our next representative, regardless if I choose to participate or not. And I would love to have a say in who represents me. You know, voting is power. And like Beija said earlier, if it did not matter, they wouldn't try so hard to stop me. They use a lot of energy in keeping people that look like me and come from communities like myself from voting, and that lets me know that it means so much to them. And if I want to change the direction of this country, the best way I feel to do it is at the ballot box every single election that comes up.
Great, thank you, Andre. And I know that you're not new to this. If anything, you could be up here giving this presentation. So thank you for participating. Anybody else want to share?
Pat, I'll go ahead and mute you.
Yes, my reason is twofold. I am from old school, and I know what my ancestors went through to get me to the point where I can exercise my voice and voice my choice. And so I'm a strong advocate about leveraging my voice, and to also be a reminder that politicians work for me. I don't work for you. And so therefore, you're accountable to me as a constituent. You're accountable to me as a taxpayer. You're accountable to me as a person who choose to put you in office because of your political platforms that are in alignment, if not 100%, at least in some way of how I feel professionally, personally, economically, spiritually, all of that. And so it's important for them to understand that as we hold you accountable and lift you up and keep you supported in your role, know that there are people you have to answer to and why you're there.
I love that. Thank you, Pat.
Yeah, thank you. And I think you hit the nail on the nose when you said if they're not 100%, you know, aligned with me, then 90%. Because a lot of times, unless you're going to run yourself, which I always encourage alums to run, you know, you're not going to find someone who's 100% with you. But if you could get 90%, you could work with that elected official 90% of the time, and then bump heads with them 10% of the time to make sure that they hear your voice. So thank you so much, and let's go to the next slide. So really quickly, so our next section is going to be looking at some of the data and facts on voter participation here in the country. Something that was really shocking to me, but only 55% of eligible voters actually vote in the presidential election, which means that less than half of half actually of our population actually determine who the president will be, which is outrageous, right? So if we're not participating in elections, that means that we're allowing only a very small sliver of the population determine who our president or who our elected officials in the communities will be. Voting levels are even lower in non-presidential elections, especially in communities of color, because a lot of times we turn out mostly for presidential elections than we do in primaries. But if we know presidents aren't the ones who actually make the law, they're the ones who sign off on the law. So if we have a great president in there, but we don't have a Congress or a Senate that's writing the writing the bills, then the change that we really want to see will never get to the desk of the president. So that's something that we need to change. Our rate of participation is lower than most Western democracies.
Thank you, Peter. Sorry about that, I was muted. So let's move on to political mobilization. That is the process of activating voters or turning out community members to vote. Political mobilizing refers to the process by which a large number of people are organized for a political activity, in this case, voting. That looks like online or in-person mobilization activities that are like ads, calls, emails, campaign events, fundraising, and others. And then some examples: empowering people to vote, participating in a cause, showing up to a rally, signing a petition, and registering to vote. This is so important. I know I talked about how it is mobilizing people in the masses, but understand that mobilizing people in smaller groups is super important too. If everybody in here, if everybody in here mobilizes 5 people to register and vote, that's going to make a huge impact. Okay, so one of my colleagues told me a story about how he won his election by 5 voters, and how he did that is he went and he dragged people to the polls, and he made people come out and make sure that their voices were heard and that their candidate was selected. So understand that political mobilization is super important at any scope, right? And large masses or small masses, we need to get people out to the polls, we need to get people voting, and we need to get people like us representing people like us.
Great, thank you, Beija. Oh, so this, is this you too? No, sorry. So why do people vote? Different reasons motivate different voters. It could be individual preferences, like voting alongside party lines, wanting representation based on gender, race, or religion, right? If you're in a predominantly Black community, there should obviously be a Black representative. If it's predominant Latino, or if you're in a community that's known for the LGBTQ community, you want to make sure that there's representation that looks like you, that has a similar background of you, and you're going to be mobilizing that community to come out and vote. Also, of course, religion, gender, or income, and other items. And you want to make sure that the representative that's in office is going to be advocating for your community, or at least thinking the way you would about the issues. Some people come out to vote also because of, like I just said, specific issues. For example, gun rights activists, pro-choice voters, party loyalists, so people who are just like, I'm going to vote down the ticket, Republican, Democrat, or Green Party, for instance, or if there's a local cause that brings them out. And then finally, the last item that affects voter turnout is state policies, such as deadlines, identification laws, if there's mail-in ballots that are allowed in the election, and other regulations. And these are those sort of regulations that have been abused with voter suppression. The census found that 36% of citizens ages 18 to 29 reported voting in last year's midterm election, jumping 16 percentage points since 2014. when turnout was 20%, and easily surpassing any midterm election since the 1980s. Turnout also increased sharply among adults 30 to 44, rising also 36%. While turnout for younger adults still lags that of their elders, last year's election marked a clear break from the past 2 decades of lower turnout among our youngest citizens. And I'll pass it off to Beija. You're muted, Beija.
Maybe I should just stop muting myself. Sorry about that. So looking at these numbers, what do these numbers tell us? Hispanic and Asian citizens have historically voted at far lower rates than white and Black citizens. But in 2018, that turnout grew to record midterm highs for both groups. Hispanic turnout rose from 27% in 2014 to 40% last year, while Asian turnout increased 27% to 41%, which is a huge increase. Turnout among white citizens continued to be far higher, with Census Bureau data finding 58% voted in 2018, up to 12 points from 2014, to the highest level in midterm elections in 4 decades. Blacks were in the middle at 51%, up 10 points from the previous midterm.
All right, so time for another pop quiz. And maybe we'll take 2 people this time. Why do we think voter participation jumped last election cycle? No wrong answer.
Okay, if no one's gonna raise their hand, it's a pop quiz. All right, thank you, Daniel.
Hello, everyone. My name is Daniel Silva, Class 2 graduate from the DFW site. I think the participation jumped last cycle just because of everything that's happening, right? I think it's becoming more aware with social media being more prevalent in our society nowadays. I think that everyone's taking more to the cause and the issues and looking to make that change.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. How about Jasmine Reyes? Would you be able to answer this for us?
Oh, yes, sorry. Why do we think voter participation last? I think mostly because we know we have a lot more tools to really get information in real time, and I think social media has really influenced the way we vote, whether it's, for bad or good. But I think that that's one of the main reasons why people are more eager to go out and vote. We just have a lot more access to information, and it's just easier to get access versus in the past.
Right. I definitely agree with that.
Great. Thank you so much.
I think it's super important to remember that voter mobilization that we talked about in the beginning, and understand that while that can work for us, we've definitely seen in the last election that work against us, right? People are mobilizing against us to get people with their agenda into seats of power. So it's as important for us to continue with that mobilization tactics in our benefit, and make sure that this election we mobilize people to get out and have our representation on boards and higher seats and things like that.
Great. Thank you all for your answers.
Awesome. Okay, so now we're going to go into how to get out the vote. We will be discussing strategy on how to get out the vote for this election. We have a few tips on how you can engage people close to you and the importance of voting. So first things first, make it personal. I think whenever I go out and I try to encourage somebody to vote, I want to talk about what matters to them and why voting is going to directly impact them. A big thing for me, I love representation. I love to see people like me on seats of power. I love people that are making the laws. I want them to make sure that they're making the laws with people like me in mind, right? So make sure that you make a real personal connection with everybody that you're talking to. The best way to do that, just have a quick conversation with them. Let them know let them know that they're what is the word I'm looking for? that they are in mind, period, and things like that. The next thing, make it easy. Voters can let little things keep them from polls. Things like not having basic voter information about the election, like when polls are open or how to find your poll location if you're recently moved, things like that. Fortunately, nonprofits in all of our communities are well equipped to help voters get out and get the information they need to vote with confidence. There's also, orgs out there who will break down the measures and our candidates in layman's terms so that they're more digestible. And that's part of our responsibility, right? To make sure that we can break these things down to everybody so that they're digestible and they understand what is on their ballot and are encouraged to vote. Okay, the next thing, raising the stakes. Voters respond to urgency. You typically see my hands going like this because there's so much urgency in making sure that you guys get out there and vote. There's so much urgency in making sure that the youth get out there and vote, that POC get out there and go. If the election seems important, that's because it is. And if you make the election seem as important as it is, we're gonna get that voter turnout, okay? And then the next one, picture it. People are more likely to vote if they can visualize their plan to do so. Will they request a mail ballot or vote early in person? What time will they head to the polls on election day? Ask people to think specifically when and how they plan to vote. Ask them to block off an hour on their calendar to make sure that they can head to the polls and vote. Things like that are really what's going to make the difference. Oh, and sorry, one last one. Voting is contagious. Research shows that if you persuade one person to vote, they will likely influence at least one additional friend or family member to vote too. Voting is habit forming. Casting a ballot for the first or second time is a lifelong voting habit. So like I said, if all of you guys go out and encourage 5 people to vote, and then they go forward and encourage 5 more people to vote, it is contagious. It will reach the masses, and we will get that voter turnout that we need. So up next, we have another pop quiz for you guys. I know you guys love it. Go ahead, Peter.
You love it. So does anyone have an example of how they can encourage a friend or family member to vote? And of course, no wrong answers.
Thank you, Andre.
Shoot, I cut it. All right, there we go. I got excited about this question because this is actually what I do for work. But yeah, it's the little things that count, alumni and peers. So like, for instance, if you have a particular candidate that's in a race that you like, somebody put like a yard sign in front of your house or a window sign, you know what I'm saying? It can remind your neighbors that an election is coming up. And the best way to influence people to vote is you being a friend or family member of theirs. You're a trusted ally. If I walk up to a stranger, they're less likely, to listen to me. But if you know somebody, they value your opinion. If you say, election is coming up in a week, that's something that they'll remember. And it's just the little things. Or if you volunteer for a campaign, posting it on your social media can remind people that election is coming up. And if they see that you're doing like free work, like volunteering for a campaign, that will make them feel like, okay, well, that campaign must be about something because a trusted friend is willing to volunteer their time. So someone mentioned earlier, social media is a really, really, really important tool. And on the day that you vote, please, get your sticker that says I voted and gets posted in your story. That also brings awareness to the election process.
Yes, I love that. And one thing that Andre's doing that maybe he doesn't even realize he's doing is passion. Passion is such a huge part of encouragement, right? When people come and they love what they're talking about and they believe in what they're talking about when they're talking about it to you, I don't know about y'all, but I get excited for them and I get excited for myself, and that empowers me. So speaking with passion and really knowing about what's on your ballot and loving being involved in what's on your ballot is really what's going to get that voter turnout and encourage people.
Great. Does anyone else have an example they want to share?
Tess said invite them to go to the polls with you. Daniel Lugo said be the first to vote on social media, kind of piggybacking off what Andre said, or taking a picture of that sticker. Yeah, and I actually just want to give a 5-minute warning.
Oh,
okay. Awesome.
Thank you so much for that, Kaylee. Well, then I guess we should move on to the next slide then. So in order to make voter registration extremely easy for our alumni community, and I think some of you may, if you know me, you know that I've been talking about this for the last year. We have been partnering with TurboVote, the same organization that partners with leading brands in order to mobilize voters. This has resulted in us having our very own website that is a one-stop shop for alumni to come in, register to vote, sign up for reminders. You could change, it'll help you change your party preferences. And if you moved, you could also update that information too. We as an organization have a national goal of mobilizing 1,000 alumni to vote in the 2020 presidential election. That sounds like a lot, right? But like what was mentioned earlier, there's I think 150 people on this call altogether, right? If each person went to their family or got 10 people to come out to vote, boom, that's 1,000 people, right? To come out in their community to vote, and that is enough to sway local elections. We also have a toolkit that I could share with all of you that has information like a sample email that you could share, basic information on what TurboVote is, what it can do, and just examples of what you can do in your local alumni community to register alumni and get out the vote. And then I want to, of course, end our presentation with a call to action. Next week is National Voter Registration Day. So, you know, we got, I think there was supposed to be 30 people on the, well, I guess we got 18 people on this call. If you could go out there, make sure your family's registered to vote, make sure friends are registered to vote. You know, we could easily mobilize here, this group of alumni to sway elections in our own community. And below here is our link to TurboVote. It's yearup.turbovote.org. And you will also be getting an email with this information so that you could use it. Just remember, your vote is your voice. Don't let anybody take your voice away from you. Don't let anybody tell you that your vote doesn't matter. If they're saying that, that is intentionally trying to silence you. Don't give up something that our ancestors have fought and died for, that, you know, originally Black and brown people didn't have the right to vote. And actually even white people, the only people who could vote were white male landowners. So even if you're white, you didn't have the ability to vote in this country when it was first founded. So don't give up that power to society. Be out there and make sure that you're making a change. And I guess we'll open it up for any questions. I know that we have like 1 minute for that, so sorry about that. Thank you.
I also posted my email in there, and I'll be forwarding any questions that you guys have. You guys can go ahead and email me. I'll forward them to Peter, and we can answer them together if we don't get to you right now, which we might not.
Yeah, I think this might be ending any minute now. So okay. Everyone for joining. Yeah, it's closing in 1 minute. So thank you for joining. Okay. Hope you all learned something new, and you will be going out to vote because it is happening. And if you're not going out to vote, send in those ballots. And we talk to you all in the